Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call our school committee meeting to order, our budget meeting this evening. Today is May 15th, 2018. We have the full committee as well as our superintendent, Herb Levine, our assistant superintendent, Kara Mertag, Jared Stanton, our business manager, and Steve Farrell, our human resources director. Lot to cover tonight. I did want to make, though, some opening remarks before we go into the budget meeting. There's been some headlines in the newspapers that I wanted to kind of correct and explain because I have received a few calls about it. But the reports in the newspaper stated that we were cutting our school budget by $6.2 million. And I want to be very clear that we are not cutting our school budget by $6.2 million. We had a fiscal year 2018 budget of $71,894,793. This year, we are actually adding to that number $1.8 million, so it would be $73,694,793. That would be the number we're working forward on. What's happened is because of contractual obligations, because of the 9.9% increase in our health insurance costs, which was really hit us hard this year, retirement obligations, costs of additional expenses that have added up, we as a committee have had to look within our budget. Our superintendent, our assistant superintendent have had to look to reallocate the money within the budget to account for those additional costs, special education, transportation, some other things that we're working on. So the money that we're dealing with, I want to make sure it's very clear that we are adding to our budget this year, to our school budget, $1.8 million. The potential cuts, the things that we have to discuss as a committee tonight, is the reallocation of that $73+ million that we have in our budget. So those are the decisions we have to make. And again, that's because of contractual obligations, because of a 9.9% health insurance increase, retirement obligations, and additional expenses, as I said, that certainly add up. But I want to make it very, very clear that we are in no way, as a school committee, as a city, as administration, are cutting $6.2 million from our budget. I think it was a very misleading newspaper headline that I think really confused people, and maybe that was the intent. But certainly as a committee and as a city, we've made a substantial investment into education in our community, most notably this school building here, in technology, in a whole number of areas that I know all of us are very proud of. We've added to the budget this year $1.8 million, but we do have some difficulties because of those increased costs and some challenges ahead of us that we have as a committee have to do the best we can to talk through and make some decisions on. But I wanted to be very clear on that because, again, that was very misleading, and I think it was confusing to some people, and that would never happen as a community. So let's move on now to the discussion that we need to have regarding some of these decisions. And I want to turn it over to you, Dr. Levine. I know there's been some changes to your proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those of you in the audience, the sheet reflected in yellow would be the most recent proposal that I've made for changes. I propose that we add $22,000 to the high out, low in line. I think we're comfortable doing that. I am recommending that, I know that in discussion at the last budget meeting, there was sentiment amongst the school committee to add back as many paraprofessionals as possible. I have added back 4 out of the 5, so that the reduction is only 1. The reason that we're able to do that is because I am recommending that we eliminate 1 maintenance craftsman at $53,000. I am recommending and move that into the paraprofessional line, which I have already done, assuming your approval. I am also, in additional revenue, because of a 240 grant rollover, we've been able to allocate $50,000 to that line, and that accounts for the 4 out of 5 bodies that we're able to bring back, plus the $22,000 that we added up in the high out, low in salary. I'm also recommending to the school committee that we eliminate 1 clerical position in special education And the reason that is an asterisk is because we may actually need that position next year. We're going to try it in a different way to get the job that person did. By the way, it's vacant now except for a long-term substitute. So at the end of the year, I recommend that it just go away and that we redistribute some of those responsibilities in a different way. I think we can do that successfully, but it could be that Kara is back at the table next year in October and saying, we misread that and we need that position back. But for now, I recommend that we eliminate that job. And that's the next one, BCBA, it should be, not BCAB. That's a behavioral specialist. By her own request, she wants to cut back from a full-time 1.0 to 3 days a week. So it's a reduction of 0.4. And the reason that it turns out to be a reduction is because we have already budgeted in our budget moving forward from a grant contractual services that will be able to fill in the 2 days that she doesn't have. So we're able to spend contractual services rather than salary on that line and still have all the services from the behavioralists that we need. So it's actually a savings of $38,350. I know that we will have to add at least one special ed teacher over the summer, and maybe two. We are at break points regarding population in a number of our programs. We expect to need probably 2 classrooms. I am suggesting that we, and I will talk to Kara about this, but move those programs over to the west where the classrooms that are being vacated by the special ed central office people by moving to the high school. Those classrooms will be available. So we will probably have to add 2 special education teachers quite soon. I am therefore recommending that the money that's saved from the 0.4 not be allocated for anything specifically right now. It will help us in our additional needs over the summer. And as you know, ever since I've been here, we've added teachers over the summer because of population shifts and the need to keep class sizes down, which we're all committed to. And with that, Mr. Mayor, this is the budget that I'm recommending.
Thank you, Dr. Levine, and I apologize. We did not do the Pledge of Allegiance before the meeting started, and that was my fault. Could everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. All right, thank you, Dr. Levine, for that summary. Now we will open it up to school committee members for any thoughts or comments, questions. Mrs. Dunn?
I have a quick one, believe it or not. On athletic, down below, it says 30,000 of athletic general fund expenses will be charged to the athletic revolving account. Do we have an athletic revolving account where we don't charge any admission anymore?
I'll turn that over to Jared.
Through the chair, yes, we do. We also have fees that are in there, and we will at least end with $30,000 to cover what we have obligated for FY19.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. We'll open it up for further comments or questions. Mr. Huckman?
Well, I'll ask before I start making some motions if anyone else wants to make any comments on the proposed budget that the superintendent has put before us. No? So I can do this in a couple of different ways. With regard to and I'll ask through the chair to all of my colleagues, with regard to the non-personnel reductions, would we like to take them line by line or as a group? Line by line. Okay, so, Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with regard to a reduction of 2 Unit A and Unit B days per diem. So moved.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman. Seconded,
I'll second.
thank you, Mr. Olympio. Seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote.
Yes.
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 No.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with regard to a reduction in school supplies for departments, if I'm reading that right, in the amount of $500,000.
Second.
You've heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote. On the motion, Mrs. Dunn?
On the school supplies, I am assuming that that's the, the paper that we use, the pencils, et cetera, et cetera. Does that also include cleaning supplies and any of the supplies we need for technology, or is it just traditional supplies, I guess I should say?
Go ahead.
Through the chair, it's all of the schools and departments' discretionary spending except for the maintenance. So the maintenance are.
Maintenance separate? Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
There is still $800,000 left in this line. We feel that for 1 year, we can get by with that. I do think that we have, and by the way, Jared and Kara are going through each line regarding supplies and reallocating according to the needs of each school. For example, the West School could not take that kind of a hit across the board, so they'll get the money that they need. I don't think that we're going to be in a position where we're going to have to worry at the end of the year about supplies.
Okay. And it doesn't include workbooks for the elementary school
No.
students, does it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you. Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, if I may on this one, ask a question through you to, I don't know if it's Mr. Stanton or Dr. Levine. The health insurance reduction that we're looking for, that's linked to the reduction in staff? Is that what that's?
That's part of it. This line item was 1.3 plus. We're taking $400,000 of it with great optimism. So this is actually an increase of $900,000.
Right.
The original increase was 1.3. So we're hoping for the best, that there will be fewer people, and we're hoping for a better number because it's not definite yet. But we feel that we can work within this budget with that number.
Motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $400,000 in health insurance.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. You've heard the motion, seconded by Mr. Olympio. And I did want to add on that, if there's no objection, because of the 9.9% health increase that I mentioned earlier, that's approximately $2 million citywide. That accounts for the $900,000 to $1 million increase in this year's budget. So the $400,000 is a decrease from the initial, when we talked about the budget being 1.3 to 1.4 million. And again, we're hoping, for the best on that. But I wanted to be very clear that our health insurance obligation on the school side went up almost $1 million.
And before the roll, if I may, and Mr. Mayor, or through you to, again, any of the administrators that are here, we are honoring, we will honor our contractual obligations with regard to health insurance for all of our employees.
There's no question.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Hockman?
Motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with regard to a reduction of $325,000 in the maintenance line.
Second.
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry. On the motion, Mrs. Dunn?
On the motion. By deducting that amount, what will we have remaining in the budget?
While Jared's looking that up, we'll certainly have to prioritize next year if we have extraordinary expenses, but we will have enough in the line for the typical supplies that keep schools clean.
I want to get you the exact, but it's approximately, I believe, 500,000.
Okay, thank you.
It's actually approximately, so there's 689,000 currently, and that would be reduced by 325.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
Roll call on the motion?
Yes.
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 No.
Mr. Hockman?
Make a motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with regard to a reduction in special education tuitions by $500,000.
Second.
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mr. Olympio?
Yeah. Can you just explain that 500,000, is that for the tuitions that we're going to be paying out?
Through the chair. Yes, it's actually a $500,000 increase from our present number.
Okay.
So the original request in the budget was $1 million. We're cutting that in half and hoping for a really good year. We had a bad year this year in special education, meaning that we had quite a few unanticipated expenses. But the year before, we had a very good year, and it helped us with our offset at the end of the year. So we're hoping for a better year. And in this budget, if we budgeted to the maximum, looking at the worst-case scenario, we
Yeah.
would lose a lot of teachers. So I'm hoping for the best in a number of these line items so that we can open the year with the teachers that we need in front of us.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Make a motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $65,000 in the technology plan.
Second.
You've heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mr. Hockman, then Mr. Amico.
Thank you. And then again, through you to the administration, this is an increase in the technology plan. We are going to be funding one-to-one Chromebooks for 11th and 12th grade. This is, from what I understand, we're voting on not providing Chromebooks to kindergarten and first grade classrooms. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. This is, if you approve this, it's approving half of the original request.
And that would be, my understanding is, we are 1 year ahead of schedule in terms of our technology plan that we established a few years ago to increase by 1 year, every year, the one-to-one Chromebook initiative. So I was thinking initially when we came into budget that we would just be going from 6th grade to 11th grade, and then hopefully next year go from 6th grade to 12th grade. So actually, as a committee and administration, we are funding 11th and 12th grade this year. So we are ahead by 1 year, which is good news for us, and I think a good investment. Mr. Amico?
I'm all set, Mr. Mayor. It's basically the same question as Mr. Hockman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Dunn, you have a
Just
question?
a general question. At each of the elementary schools, do they still have computers in the library, or are they all relying on the cart?
Some have them in the library still. Most have them on the carts.
Okay.
They all have them on the carts,
They-
actually, but
okay.
some still have some computers in the library.
Okay, so the kindergarten and first grade would have, they certainly have access to computers.
They would absolutely
They
have
just don't
access
bring
to
one-
those computers,
they don't
that's right.
bring one home, or, okay, all right.
If I may, there's now enough Chromebook carts that there should be something available to a classroom that doesn't have them, to be able to use that classroom, that cart. They're all on rollers, they're all on wheels,
Yeah.
and it's not like they'll do without, they just won't have their own next year.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And I did want to add, just on the one-to-one Chromebook initiative that we've established, we are one of the very few cities and towns in this whole area, Essex County, that offer that services to our children. So I think it's something that I know is a big investment for us but I know it's something that we're very proud of, and very, very few schools, systems offer that service. Roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regard to homeless transportation, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $125,000.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're not actually reducing homeless transportation. We're with this vote, we're reducing Title I services, I think, and that concerns me. This is one of the non-personnel reductions that bothers me the most. They all bother me, but this one bothers me the most. And I made the motion and will vote in favor of it because I have a lot of faith in the incoming superintendent and the current mayor, insofar as these are services that are necessary for the most vulnerable members of our community. And should those services be required, I haven't asked, and I don't think any other committee member has asked yet of the mayor to increase the amount of money that he's provided to the school department for this year's budget. But I will tell you that if these services are needed and we don't have the money for them as the school year starts, this is something I will come to you for.
Yep. Well said, Mr. Hockman. I understand.
Just through the chair, we will never turn away students that need those services.
Mrs. Dunn?
Could you tell us how much would be in the Title I grant? I know it isn't definite until we receive it, but after you reduce it by $125,000.
Just over, just shy of 800,000. But we're allowed to carry over 15%, so there could be at least 15% that we could put towards that as well
Okay.
from this year's grant.
Uh-huh. And how many, I know we have Title I services at the elementary level. We don't have them at middle or high school, right? How many of the elementary schools qualify? 5?
When I first started here, it was 3.
Mm.
Yeah.
Went to 4 and now 5.
School-wide,
Yeah.
not targeted assistance, they're so school-wide.
Yeah.
So that's 800,000 amongst 5 schools. Okay, thank you.
Roll call vote, please?
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $122,000 in the high-low salary offset line.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please?
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $125,000 in the utilities line.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand, and I know we should always be trying to save money on utilities. It's something we really definitely can control. My only worry is I would not want any of the newer schools that require a different type of airflow. I'm not going to say air conditioning because the newer buildings don't all have air conditioning, but just want to make sure that we're not thinking that we can shut off the air if there isn't school going on. We still need to let that go through.
Through the chair. We've saved considerable money in this building.
Right.
Our electricity's up a bit throughout the district, but we feel that this is a number that we can live with in this budget because of the savings that we have had here. So as we move forward, we may even have more savings later on, especially as we replace older buildings with newer efficiencies. But right now, I think that this is a real number that we can live with.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call vote, please?
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move that we follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $80,000 in the transportation budget.
Second.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll, Mrs. Dunn?
Can you tell us what that would consist of?
Yes, that's actually reflective of the good work that Mr. Stanton did in negotiating a new contract.
Oh,
We expected a 6% increase, and he negotiated a 3% increase.
sorry. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move that we follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $50,000 in contracted services.
Second.
Thank you. Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $35,000 in the special education supplies.
Second.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $30,000 in athletics.
Second.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mr. Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Dr. Levine, could you just explain where that money is coming from? Because there is an asterisk there, just for the
Sure.
public.
Sure. That will come from a revolving account where we have the money, and we'll be able to apply the revolving account money to the items that are needed in athletics to the tune of $30,000.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $15,600 in the teaching of extracurricular stipends.
Second.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mrs. Carpenter.
Thank you, through the chair. Could you identify for me what those stipends are?
Yes, it's one stipend. It's the PANS program, reducing one full-time teacher at night. The two teachers that are there will share the responsibilities rather than having two teachers for the 4 nights of the program each week. This may or may not work. We're going to try it. The population of the PANS program goes up and down during the year. Sometimes there are very, very few students in there. I did talk to Mr. Brand about this, and I think we're comfortable trying it to see what happens. And if it doesn't work, Ms. Murtagh may be back to the table asking you to put $15,000 back in that teaching stipend.
Through the chair, Ms. Murtagh, you will come before us if this needs to be replenished.
Well, certainly.
Thank you.
On the motion, Mrs. Dunn, then Mr. Hockman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 2 lines for PANS. This one, the teaching extracurricular stipend, but then down below is a PANS stipend for $1,700. How many people will be how many people do we currently have with PANS, and how many would we have after these reductions?
Yeah, actually, now that you notice that, thanks for noticing, by the way, that may be a double hit there for the same person. There's only one PANS reduction, and it's around 17,000. Is that the same, or is that different?
I thought it was different.
Different?
Can I look into that?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
look into that for now.
Mr. Mayor, can I withdraw my motion?
Yeah, let's hold that.
And
Let's
we'll
hold
take
that.
that up
Yeah.
later. If that's okay with everybody. Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $35,000 for professional development.
Second.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mr. Olympio.
Yes. Yeah, through the chair. Is that 35,000 reduction for administration, for teachers? Is that?
Through the chair, that could be for anything. But we've
Anything.
identified it as $35,000 for administration at this
Okay.
point.
Okay.
but that could change over time with different needs.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Okay. Do we want to go on to personnel reductions?
We don't, but it looks like we're going to. This is not a pleasant evening for anybody here. So I'm going to take them a little bit out of order, if that's okay, out of the order that they're listed on the page. Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $5,000 for the technology stipend.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call on the motion, Mrs. Dunn?
And what does that entail? Who receives a stipend for technology?
I believe it's a technology assistant. Is that right?
No.
What is the 5,000? Wait, you say it. Oh, this is for the website.
Yeah.
We were paying a $5,000 stipend that we no longer will be paying, because we now have a new website, and the person who is running it will be different.
Okay.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $12,000 for the attendance paraprofessional.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote on the motion, Mrs. Carpenter?
Is that a reduction, is it going to part-time?
No, this is a reduction from 3 to 2 attendance paras.
Okay.
And that's, that,
Mr. Hockman?
and is that through attrition?
I do not expect that to be through attrition.
Hmm.
That will be a clerical position or a para position that will be lost. However, it won't necessarily, if I may, there's a bumping procedure, so it depends on seniority, because there are other openings that will be not only at the high school but throughout the school system. We've had a number of retirements in the para line, so we won't necessarily be losing a person. Once again, we'll be losing a position.
Right. And it's my, if I may, through the chair, without any guarantees, but it's my understanding that there's enough bumping that's available where it should be a loss of a position and not a person,
That is correct.
if somebody wants to keep a position.
Right.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, if I can ask a question at this point? Through you to, again, the administration, what's the secondary library para reduction? What does that mean to me?
That would be the para in the library at the high school, or the Higgins. Most likely the Higgins.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $21,964 from the library paraprofessional at a secondary school.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
No.
Yes.
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 Through the chair, before you go on to the next one, if you would go back to the PAN stipend, that's the real PAN stipend reduction.
So-
The one up here is something that should not be on the list. That's my fault. I missed that. This is the teaching extracurricular stipend. I'll throw it out there, but I don't think the school committee will vote for it. It's cutting in half the number of extracurricular positions throughout the year at each of the schools, each of the elementary schools. We have 6, so that would cut it from 6 to 3 for the extracurricular types of things that we do, including MCAS support and things of that nature. So I'm actually recommending against this. You certainly can consider it since it's on the table, but I'm recommending that you instruct me to find that $15,000 somewhere else.
It's not even going to become a motion, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the other one is legitimate.
So
That's
I
the PAN stipend.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, or is it Dr. Superintendent? I make a motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with regard to a reduction of $17,000 in the PAN stipend.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a $70,000 reduction in the guidance department.
Second.
Through the chair, if I may just explain that for the public consumption. This is a retirement at the high school that will not be filled. It still leaves, in our opinion, a good student ratio with the guidance department, since we have reduced from 1,850 to 1,400 opening in September at the high school over the last 4 years. Again, I'll remind the public that most of that reduction is due to the kids who have made the choice to go to Essex Aggie. I think it's still Essex Aggie, Essex Tech. So I recommend this because I believe that we have had a reduction in kids that equals a class. So I believe that the high school can handle, the high school guidance department can handle the fewer number of guidance counselors at this point.
Mrs. Dunn?
Just to check, when we do that reduction, do you know what the per pupil ratio would be to each guidance counselor at the high school?
So I think it will be, depending upon how many students Mr. Quist takes, it should be around 275.
Okay.
Which is okay for high school.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last year at this time, we revamped the guidance department through the budget process. So I guess this is, are you able to, did we realize the benefits that we were hoping to by going through that?
Or without question, and we continue to move forward in the right direction.
And not to sound like an attorney, but is it your opinion that because we realized some of those benefits that you're comfortable making this recommendation?
That's one of the reasons. It's primarily numbers,
Okay.
quite
Thank
frankly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Hockman.
Objection.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $47,815 in a clerical position.
Second.
Heard the motion.
I'm sorry.
You've heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Dr. Levine?
Sometimes I think I'm the mayor, and I forget that sometimes. So, just for the public's consumption, this will be a reduction of a person who is full-time to half-time, less than half-time, actually, 19 and a half hours. This job that we're thinking of was originally 19 and a half hours. That will also save us health insurance, and that's why the reduction is as high as it is.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $15,000 in the Higgins housemaster line.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $15,000 in the high school dean line.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $50,000 in custodians.
Second.
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Dr. Levine, could you explain this again? I think you spoke about it before, but.
Sure.
Thank you.
Originally, I had recommended in your original sheets 5 custodial reductions. We have reallocated the money and been able to only recommend a reduction of 1, and this is a position that is currently unfilled, so it will not be a person, it's a position.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $53,000 in a maintenance craftsman line.
Second.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $25,000 in paraprofessionals line.
Second.
Through the chair, we have had 2 retirements from the paraprofessional line over the last 2 weeks, so this will definitely be a reduction by attrition.
Thank you, Dr. Levine. Mr. Hockman?
And Mr. Mayor, I think, and I hope the administration can confirm this, this line is being reduced by far less than it was originally proposed.
That is correct. The original proposal was 5 at $150,000.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I move to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $113,232 from the library paraprofessionals line.
Second.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mrs. Dunn?
My question is, I'm assuming the majority of the library paraprofessionals are the elementary schools.
Yes.
Does this leave us with a paraprofessional at each elementary school, or is it cutting
Yes,
down?
it's reducing by half their hours. It would go from 19 and a half to 12, I believe. It's basically cutting the line in half, but I think we can get 12 hours. So it would be, I think most of the elementary schools, and some of my elementary principals are here, at least some of the elementary schools open their library Monday through Thursday. Do you open it on Friday as well, you guys? No. So we can comfortably get, I think, 3 hours a day for the library paraprofessionals. So it would be a little less than half of a reduction. All the same people if they choose to stay, but about a half a reduction.
Roll call vote, please.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, before I make the next motion, I'm going to ask you so that if we do make the next motion, we're made whole. The $15,600 that we're going to wind up being short because of the teaching extracurricular stipend, are you able to come up with that if we go through the next motion and make it?
Yes, I think we can.
Thank you. With that,
Can you come up with 115,000?
and I'm going to make a motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent by a reduction of $700,000 from classroom teachers.
Second.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. Through the chair to Dr. Levine, could you please reiterate
Yeah.
for everyone here exactly how that process is going to work?
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. There will be 5 reductions at the elementary levels. I have talked to every principal. We've met individually and gone over the class sizes. I know where those cuts will come from. Nobody will lose their job at the elementary level. These will all be cuts by attrition through either non-renewals or retirements. The same is true at the high school. We've identified 5 teaching positions at the high school. Nobody will lose their job at the high school that I know of unless anything changes. And I only put a caveat there because Mr. Buckley is still working the schedule. He's only about 60% through next year's schedule. So if anything changes, I would let you know. But right now, I can say pretty safely that nobody will lose their job at the high school that we want to keep. These 5 reductions will be through either non-renewals or retirements. And we have a couple of retirements at least at the high school, and we know of a few other openings that there will be. So we do not expect anybody at the high school, and we know for sure anybody at the elementary school to lose their jobs that we want to keep.
Thank you, through the chair. Dr. Levine, also to Ms. Mertag. That being said, we all know that the budget is very fluid. We cannot contractually go over class size. There will be no classroom or there will be no classes that are cut that will impact the students, and you will come back to us if anything drastic is going to happen in that regard.
Through the chair, typically, and I would ask you to give the same flexibility to Ms. Mertag, especially over the summer, and especially by August 1st, when we have the move-ins and move-outs. We take a hard look every day at the class size numbers, and the principals can attest to the fact that if they need a teacher, they get a teacher. So the answer to that is absolutely the first and most firm commitment that I have had in education is not only to do what's good and right for kids, but to make certain that at the lower elementary level, pre-K through, or at least K through 2, that the class sizes are some of the lowest on the North Shore, 18 to 20. We loosen up a little bit, 3, 4, and 5, but not much. And I can promise you that we will never go over contractual obligation. For example, the positions at the Carroll School that we're going to take, there are currently 6 teachers for 95 kids. We can be very comfortable with 4 teachers for 95 kids. So when all is said and done through retirement and through non-renewal, principals have a right to take a look at their own school and move people around, and then I know where the openings are. We then put those out for the list of transfers. Teachers may transfer into openings that they have requested if they so choose. They will have 24 hours to make that decision. And then we open up new jobs if transfers aren't made. So there will be no unfilled positions. Class sizes will still be very, very good, and nobody will lose their job that we want to keep.
Thank you.
Mrs. Dunn?
Just to follow up on Mrs. Carpenter's question, could the school committee please be notified at the high school level if, when they complete the scheduling, if there are any courses that are being eliminated, if we could be told about those?
Absolutely. We don't expect that to happen.
Okay.
We may lose a section or 2 because of population.
Right.
But we don't, as a matter of fact, I think we're adding the civics course. You voted that. I don't think that we're going to be eliminating offerings, but I'll let you know if that's on the chopping block.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This vote screams for redistricting. And I don't mean to pick on any particular schools, but I'm looking at the enrollment projections for next year, and I see class grades in a building of 34, 29 in the 4th grade, 34 in the 5th grade, and due to the contract, we're required to have 2 teachers for that school for those grade levels. So we have an unnamed particular school that's going to have 15 kids in one grade 4 class and 14 kids in another grade 4 class. When I look at some other schools and I see 24 kids in a grade 4 class and 25 kids in a grade 4 class, we really need to address redistricting. This vote has a greater impact on that than we've experienced in the past.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 I think we have a few additions like we can vote on.
Well, I think we have two more reductions down
Oh.
below, down the bottom, that were mentioned earlier by Dr. Levine.
Oh, I apologize. So, Mr. Mayor, on the BCBA, if I can, I understand that the person, one of our full-time BCBAs has requested a reduction in her workload for family reasons. You, I think in your presentation of that, indicated that we would fill, or we would have that .4 FTE picked up by someone else. Is that a current BCBA with us, or someone looking to work on a per diem basis, or?
Through the chair. It's not unusual for BCBA's, OT, PT, et cetera, to work part-time sometimes, because the school system may not need full-time in every area. So in this particular case, we have put into a grant contracted services that will allow us, through special education, to hire out of the grant, which will not impact our salary. That's why it's a reduction.
Yeah, no, and thank you. This is one of the areas, I was talking to Mr. Stanton earlier tonight to get some explanation on this, and he was terrific in providing me with information. But this is one of the areas that I'm proudest of, that this committee has increased BCBA services from the 9 years I've been involved in the school committee, from 1 FTE to 3 FTEs, and it's a hugely needed service. And I am familiar with several BCBAs just by chance, and they do have private practice in other areas where they work, and it is very common for not full-time BCBAs to work through school systems. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $38,350 in the BCBA line.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 And hopefully for the last vote on a reduction tonight and till next year's budget, and maybe for a few budgets in the future, I make a motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent with a reduction of $38,300 in a clerical line.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mr. Hockman.
And again, just to reiterate, this is a position, not a body.
That is correct. There is a long-term sub in that right now, just to fulfill the rest of the year. But when this job goes away, so does that person, but we have no obligation to that person.
Thank you.
Roll call vote.
Yes.
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 So to the few additions that we're able to vote on, and by the way, thank you to the committee, thank you to people here tonight, and to the, this is a difficult night for all of us, and we appreciate your support for why you're here. We understand the basis for that support, and we're with you in that support. This is not a pleasant night for anybody. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to increase the Higgins teachers line by $140,000.
Second.
Roll call vote. You've heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, I'm making a motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent to add an assistant principal at the Brown School at the cost of $65,000.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Dr. Levine.
Through the chair, just to explain to the public, this is presently a half-time assistant principal, so there already is that position there. This is to increase it to full-time. The complexity of the Brown School and the new incoming principal cries out, I'll use your terms, cries out for a full-time assistant principal, which probably should have been done quite a while ago, but we never had the money for it. We certainly don't have excess money to do this, but this position is absolutely necessary for the smooth functioning of that building.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Do we need a vote on the revenue piece, Mr. Mayor?
Dr. Levine, I don't
No,
believe we do.
The revenue is the revenue.
Mis-
That's revenue that we expect. We certainly are very confident about the circuit breaker revenue, somewhat confident about the kindergarten grant. I may have to come back to you if we don't get the kindergarten grant.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adjourn the budget meeting.
Okay. Do we need a final vote on the number?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
We'll recess?
You sure that's the number?
Oh, because we have the public
Is that
meeting,
the
right.
number? Okay.
All right, so that'll just be, when we go to the public meeting next week.
Oh, right, right.
So we'll recess this. Do we need a vote on that, Jared? We'll do the non-salary and the salary lines at the budget, at
So
the
if you-
public meeting.
Through the chair, if you vote a final number, it could be voted pending the open hearing.
Do you have that number, Jared? And I'm going to add 15,6. You did, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the budget as we've identified it tonight and through the book that Mr. Stanton has provided us for the fiscal 2018-19 Peabody Public school year for Peabody Public Schools at $73,710,393.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, Mrs. Dunn?
This is pending discussion next week on the busing.
Through the chair, with the numbers that we estimate, I don't expect that this school committee could or would vote any change in the transportation policy. So I can't imagine that there would be any discussion regarding budget of transportation, only to alert the public that it is unaffordable, even a small change.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Motion to adjourn, Mr. Mayor. I mean recess, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. We have the public hearing on the school budget is set for next Tuesday, May 22nd, and the time for that meeting is 7 o'clock at the commencement of the regular school committee meeting.
Through the chair. One announcement.
Dr. Levine?
It's my pleasure to announce that Kara and I and a committee have finally chosen a Brown School principal. Her name is Lauren King. She has signed on the dotted line. We will introduce her in the next meeting or two. We're very, very excited that we have been able to attract her to Peabody, and I know that Ms. Murtagh actually went out to her school the other day and was really blown away by the wonderful, the first impression that we had was the right impression, that she will be wonderful. So you may want to add anything to that.
We're very excited, as saddened as I am to see Mrs. Metropolis to go. Mrs. King has an extensive background. She's been a full-time assistant principal and very eager, very positive, and knows all her students in her current school and has very innovative ideas.
Thank you for a good meeting.